A Hollywood-acclaimed actor used his talent to ridicule any form of faith in his movies and interviews. "These people with their charms and prayers are pathetic," he remarked to the TV host, gesturing toward the crucifix worn by his housekeeper. "It's like believing in the Easter Bunny, but with more guilt and less chocolate." In his penthouse apartment, he toasted to his own reflection while laughing at fan letters from religious viewers trying to save his soul. What this actor could never have predicted was how his own arrogance would become the instrument of a lesson no Hollywood director could ever script. Nathan Taylor gazed at Los Angeles through the large window of his penthouse apartment. At 35, he was one of Hollywood's most successful actors, with 3 golden statuettes adorning his shelf and multi-million-dollar contracts lined up for the next 5 years. His face was plastered on billboards, magazines, and movie screens across the country. Life was exactly as he had planned. "Mr. Taylor, I've finished tidying up the room. Do you need anything else?" asked Rosa, the housekeeper who worked in his residence 3 times a week. Nathan turned slowly, offering a rehearsed smile. "No, Rosa, everything's perfect as always." He watched as the middle-aged woman packed away her cleaning supplies. Rosa was efficient and discreet, qualities Nathan valued in his employees. However, there was something about her that irritated him deeply. The small golden crucifix she always wore around her neck, and the occasional mentions of God that slipped into their conversations. Rosa adjusted her purse on her shoulder and, as was her custom, said, "May God bless you, Mr. Taylor. I'll be praying for your next film." Nathan waited until he heard the door close before rolling his eyes. That naive devotion always bothered him. In his view, faith was a crutch for weak people, incapable of facing the reality that they were alone in the universe. He, on the other hand, believed only in himself and the power of hard work. A week later, Nathan was being interviewed live on one of the most popular television programs in the country. The host, Jake Murray, was known for asking provocative questions. "So, Nathan, you're known for not holding back your opinions. In an industry where many actors profess some kind of faith, you openly declare yourself an atheist. Has that ever affected your career in any way?" Nathan leaned back in his chair, comfortable with the topic. "Look, Jake, I'll be honest. I think it's long past time for us to move past these fairy tales. I have a housekeeper, great professional by the way, who wears a crucifix and is always talking about how God is going to bless me. It's almost comical." The host smiled, sensing he had just gotten a controversial statement. Nathan continued, now energized. "You know what I find funny? People who attribute their success to some invisible entity. I achieved everything I have through my own talent and effort. I didn't need any miracle or divine blessing. And honestly, I think it's time for society to grow up and stop leaning on these superstitions." "Strong words," Jake commented. "But what about people who find comfort in faith during difficult times?" "Well, I respect everyone's right to believe whatever they want," Nathan replied with a condescending smile. "But personally, I think it's like believing in the Easter Bunny. If it makes you feel better, great. But don't expect me to pretend it makes any sense." The interview moved on to other topics, but the damage was already done. On social media, comments about his statements spread like wildfire. 3 days later, Nathan was in his dressing room preparing for a crucial scene in his new film. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing with social media notifications. Some fans supported him, while others expressed disappointment over his words. The interview. A knock on the door. It was Rosa, who had been hired by the production to assist with maintaining the dressing rooms during filming. "Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Taylor. I just came to restock the towels." Nathan nodded, unable to hide his discomfort at her presence. He wondered if Rosa had watched the interview, if she had heard the things he said about people like her. "Rosa," he said suddenly, "did you see my interview with Jake Murray?" She hesitated for a moment, placing the clean towels on a shelf. "Yes, sir, I did." "And what did you think?" Rosa met his gaze with a calm expression that unsettled him deeply. "It's not my place to judge your words, Mr. Taylor. Everyone is entitled to their own beliefs. But I mocked your faith on national television," he insisted. unsure why he was prolonging this conversation. "Doesn't that bother you?" "You didn't mock my faith," she replied with a gentle smile. "You only mocked the idea you have of it." Those are two different things. Before Nathan could respond, his assistant rushed into the dressing room. "They're calling you to set, Nathan. It's urgent." The scene Nathan was about to film was a complex action sequence. While a stunt double handled the most dangerous maneuvers, the actor still had to appear in key moments. Everything was going according to plan until, during one take, a suspension cable snapped. Nathan plummeted nearly 12 feet. The medical team was called immediately, while he remained motionless, an excruciating pain searing through his spine. At the hospital, the diagnosis was alarming: fractures in 2 vertebrae, with a risk of compromised movement in his legs. Nathan underwent emergency surgery, but the doctors were clear about the uncertainties of his prognosis. "I'll be honest with you, Mr. Taylor," Dr. Williams said after the operation. "The surgery went well, but we can't guarantee you'll walk normally again. It'll take time and intense physical therapy to assess your recovery." News of Nathan's accident spread quickly. Within hours, the hospital was surrounded by reporters and fans. His agent, Melissa, walked into his room with a worried expression. "How are you feeling?" "How do you think I'm feeling?" he snapped bitterly. "My career might be over." Melissa sat on the edge of the bed. "Don't be so pessimistic. The doctors said there's a chance for recovery." "Chance," Nathan repeated with a humorless laugh. "A great chance that I'll never do another action scene or even walk without a limp. Who's going to hire me like this?" The following weeks were painful and frustrating. Nathan, who was used to being in control, now found himself completely dependent on nurses and physical therapists. His irritability grew by the day, and few of his so-called Hollywood friends showed up to visit. One afternoon, while struggling through seemingly simple exercises during his physical therapy session, Nathan erupted in frustration. "This is useless," he shouted, shoving the equipment away. "It's been a month, and I can barely stand for more than 5 minutes." Carlos, his patient and experienced physical therapist, was already used to his outbursts. "Recovery takes time, Mr. Taylor. You're making progress, even if you don't see it." "Progress?" Nathan scoffed bitterly. "My career is ruined. Half of my so-called friends have disappeared. And to top it all off, I'm stuck in this bed like an invalid." At that moment, a soft knock on the door interrupted his rant. It was Rosa, carrying a small vase of flowers. "Excuse me," she said timidly. "May I come in?" Nathan was surprised. Rosa was the last person he expected to see. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about your accident. I came to see how you were doing and brought some flowers to brighten up the room." Carlos, sensing the tension, announced that he would return in half an hour to continue the exercises, leaving them alone. An uncomfortable silence filled the air until Nathan finally spoke. "Why did you even bother coming? After everything I said on television about people like you." Rosa placed the flowers on the bedside table. "Because that's what we do. We take care of each other, even when we disagree." The simplicity of her words disarmed Nathan. "You must be loving this, huh? Your divine revenge. The arrogant guy who mocked God is now paying the price." Rosa looked at him with a mix of compassion and firmness. "No, Mr. Taylor. God doesn't work like that. He doesn't send accidents to punish people. Life just happens, with all its joys and sorrows." "And where is your God now?" Nathan asked, his voice thick with frustration. "When I'm stuck in this bed, possibly for the rest of my life?" "He's right here," Rosa answered gently. "In the people who care for you, in the strength you find to keep going. Sometimes God doesn't remove the storm. He teaches us how to navigate through it." Nathan turned his gaze away, unable to handle the sincerity in her words. "Thanks for the flowers, but I'm tired now." Rosa nodded, respecting his request. Before leaving, she said, "I'll be praying for you, Mr. Taylor." This time, he didn't roll his eyes. The following months were marked by a slow and painful recovery process. Nathan went through ups and downs, Days of progress and days of setbacks. Intensive physical therapy began to show results, but the doctors remained cautious about his chances of a full recovery. On a particularly difficult afternoon, after an exhausting session, Nathan found himself alone in his room, staring out the window at the Los Angeles sky. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly vulnerable, stripped of the layers of arrogance he'd built over the years. "If you're really out there," he murmured toward the sky, "give me a sign. Anything." At that moment, his phone rang. It was Melissa, his agent. "Nathan, I have news," she said, her voice carrying a spark of excitement he hadn't heard in a long time. "Steven Spielberg reached out. He's developing a new project and wants you for the lead role." "What?" Nathan couldn't believe it. "Melissa, did you tell him about my condition?" "Yes, I told him everything. And you know what he said? That the character was originally conceived as a former athlete who suffers an accident and has to rebuild his life. He thinks your personal experience will bring authenticity to the role." Nathan hung up, stunned. It was too much of a coincidence to ignore. A man who had always believed only in himself now found himself wondering if there was something more, some greater force at work beyond his understanding. 2 months later, Nathan was on the set of the new project. He still used a cane for long walks, but his recovery had surprised even the most skeptical doctors. The role he was playing, a man forced to reevaluate his life after a devastating accident, resonated deeply with his own experience. During a break in filming, he received an unexpected visitor. Rosa was there, invited by him. "It's good to see you working again, Mr. Taylor," she said, taking in the bustling movie set. "Please, call me Nathan," he replied, motioning for her to sit. "You know, Rosa, I never properly thanked you. Your visits during my recovery meant a lot." Rosa smiled. "No need to thank me. I'm just happy to see you doing well." Nathan took a deep breath before continuing. "I want you to know that your words that day at the hospital, they stayed with me. About God not removing the storm, but teaching us how to navigate through it. I'm glad they helped." "They did," Nathan admitted. "You know, I still have a lot of questions, a lot of doubts. I don't know if I'll ever fully understand this whole faith thing. But I've learned something important over these past months." "What's that?" "That there are more mysteries in this world than my arrogance ever allowed me to see. And that maybe, just maybe, we don't need to have all the answers to find meaning in what happens to us." Rosa nodded, her eyes shining with emotion. "That's a very valuable realization, Nathan." A production assistant approached, informing Nathan that he was needed on set in 5 minutes. "I have to go," he said, standing up with the help of his cane. "But before I do, I wanted to invite you to the premiere. It would mean a lot to me to have you there." "It would be an honor," Rosa replied. On the night of the premiere, months later, Nathan Taylor walked the red carpet with slow but steady steps. The flashes of cameras lit up his face, now carrying lines of experience that hadn't been there before the accident. Critics were already anticipating that this would be his best performance yet, deeper, more authentic. Nathan knew they were right, but for reasons that went beyond his skills as an actor. In an interview with a major film magazine, he was asked about his personal transformation after the accident. "You've always been so vocal about your atheism. Has your perspective changed after what happened?" Nathan thought for a moment before answering. "Let's just say I've learned to have humility in the face of the unknown. I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. There's room for mystery in life." "So, do you believe in God now?" the journalist pressed. Nathan smiled, remembering Rosa's words. "I believe there's more to life than what we can see or prove. And I've learned that true wisdom begins when we acknowledge the limits of our own understanding." Later that night after the film's screening, Nathan found Rosa at the reception. She looked elegant in a simple dress, her golden crucifix shining under the ballroom lights. "The film is wonderful, Nathan," she said. "Your performance, it's like you truly understood the character." "I do," he replied with a genuine smile, "more than I ever thought I would." Nathan looked around at the crowd, producers, actors, critics, all celebrating his triumphant comeback. But in that moment, he knew that his greatest achievement wasn't on the screen or in the glowing reviews. It was in the lesson he had learned, that true strength doesn't come from absolute certainty, but from the humility to recognize that there are greater forces than ourselves, whatever name we choose to give them. As he raised his glass in a silent toast, Nathan felt a peace he had never known in all his years of fame and success. It was the peace of someone who had finally understood that some of life's greatest truths can't be fully explained, only felt and respected.